Most people who own a gas generator believe that owning it means they are prepared for a grid failure. The generator sits in the garage. The tank is partially full. The plan is solid. The problem with this plan reveals itself at approximately hour 36 of a real regional grid failure, which is when the gas stations in the affected area exhaust their supply of fuel. Gas stations require electricity to operate their pumps. When the grid fails regionally, the stations that do not have generator backup stop pumping within hours. The ones that do have generator backup sell out of fuel within the first day, as every generator owner in the region arrives simultaneously. The documented timeline from the 2021 Texas grid failure shows fuel availability collapsing across the Houston metropolitan area within 30 to 40 hours of the initial grid failure. A generator without fuel is a 200-pound metal box in your garage. I replaced mine with a silent $150 DIY solar-charged battery bank that fits inside a standard toolbox, runs my freezer and communications equipment indefinitely in sunny conditions, and makes no sound that anyone outside my property can hear. Here is the complete build. Before I show you the build, I want to address the problem honestly and completely, because the conventional solution has real advantages that deserve acknowledgement before I explain why I moved away from it. A gas generator has genuine strengths. It produces high wattage on demand, it works regardless of weather or sunlight, it can run for as long as you have fuel, and it is familiar technology that most people can troubleshoot. These are real advantages. The reason I built the battery alternative is not that generators are useless in all scenarios. It is that generators have three specific failure modes in a prolonged regional grid failure that compound on each other in ways that the battery system avoids entirely. The first failure mode is the fuel dependency that I described. The second is acoustic. A 5,000-watt gas generator running at load produces approximately 65 to 75 decibels of sound at 20 feet, which is the sound level of a vacuum cleaner running continuously. In a neighborhood that is otherwise dark and quiet during a regional blackout, a running generator is audible from a significant distance and is an immediate indicator that a household has resources worth approaching. This is not a theoretical concern. FEMA after-action reports from multiple extended blackout events document a consistent pattern of generator theft and, in some cases, confrontational situations related to operating generators in distressed neighborhoods during extended events. The third failure mode is maintenance. Gas generators require fresh fuel, oil changes, and carburetor maintenance to start reliably. A generator that has sat in a garage for 2 years on stale fuel may not start when needed, which is the worst possible moment to discover a maintenance issue. The battery system I built avoids all three of these failure modes. It uses no fuel, it produces no sound, it requires no maintenance beyond keeping the connections clean. The trade-off is lower peak wattage and dependency on solar input for recharging. Here is how I designed around those trade-offs to build a system that handles my critical loads indefinitely. The science is straightforward. A photovoltaic panel converts sunlight into DC electrical current through the photoelectric effect. A charge controller manages that current flow into a battery bank, preventing overcharge and over-discharge. An inverter converts the battery's DC output into the AC current that household appliances expect. The efficiency losses in this chain, from sunlight to usable AC power, are approximately 25 to 30% across the full system. A 100-watt panel in full sun produces approximately 70 to 75 watts of usable AC power after accounting for those losses. That number is the foundation of every load calculation in this build. Here is the part that gets me every time I run the numbers against what people assume a generator gives them. Most generator owners run their generator to power everything in their house at once: refrigerator, lights, television, chargers, occasionally a window air conditioner. The total load is typically 1,500 to 3,000 watts continuous. A 5,000-watt generator handles that with capacity to spare. But most of that load is discretionary. The refrigerator is not discretionary. The communications equipment is not discretionary. Everything else is. A freezer draws approximately 100 to 150 watts when the compressor is running, with a duty cycle of approximately 30 to 40%. meaning average power consumption of around 50 watts. A ham radio transceiver on receive draws about 2 to 5 watts. A phone charger draws 5 to 15 watts. My critical load total is approximately 70 watts average. A single 100-watt panel in my location, averaging 5 peak sun hours per day, produces 500 watt-hours of energy per day. 70 watts average draw times 24 hours equals 1,680 watt-hours of daily consumption. The math says I need 3 to 4 100-watt panels for continuous operation on critical loads alone. That is the design basis for the system I built. Here is what you need. And I want to be honest with you. This is genuinely it. You need 2 100-watt monocrystalline solar panels. Current prices run approximately $40 to $50 each, $80 to $100 for the pair. You need a 20-amp PWM solar charge controller, about $12 to $15. You need 2 100-amp-hour AGM deep cycle batteries, about $60 to $80 each, from salvage or battery shops, as documented in video 1 of this series. If purchased new, approximately $120 each. You need a 300-watt pure sine wave inverter, about $25 to $35. You need a toolbox large enough to contain the batteries, inverter, and charge controller with the lid closed. A standard metal mechanics toolbox costs approximately $20 used. You need appropriately sized wiring and fuse protection, about $10. Total system cost with salvaged batteries, approximately $147 to $162. With new batteries, approximately $240 to $270. Everything in this build is linked in the description below and in the first pinned comment with Amazon links, so you can verify specifications before sourcing locally or ordering. For those of you who want to understand how this battery system integrates with the thermal mass heating from video 5 and the communications equipment from video 9 into a complete household resilience architecture, the Energy Revolution system maps out exactly that integration. You will see a QR code in the bottom right corner of your screen right now. Point your phone camera at it, and it will take you directly there. It covers how solar, storage, and load management work together across every season and every failure scenario. Now the build. Mount the 2 solar panels on any south-facing surface that receives unobstructed sunlight for the majority of the day. Roof mounting is ideal for permanent installation. For a portable or semi-permanent setup, adjustable panel stands made from EMT conduit cost about $8 in materials and allow you to optimize panel angle for the season. Connect the panel outputs in parallel, positive to positive and negative to negative, to maintain 12-volt nominal voltage while doubling available current. Run the panel output through a 10-amp inline fuse to the solar charge controller input terminals. Connect the 2 batteries in parallel, again positive and negative, to maintain 12 volts while doubling the total amp-hour capacity to 200 amp-hours. Connect the battery terminals to the charge controller battery terminals. Connect the inverter directly to the battery terminals through a 30-amp inline fuse. Place the fuse as close to the battery positive terminal as physically possible. A fuse that is 12 inches from the battery protects 12 inches of wire between the battery and the fuse, but leaves the battery terminal itself unprotected. Fuse at the terminal. Place the batteries, charge controller, and inverter inside the toolbox. Route the panel input wires through a small hole drilled in the side of the toolbox, sealed with a rubber grommet. Route the AC output cord from the inverter through a similar hole. When the toolbox lid is closed, the system is contained, protected from weather exposure, and visually indistinguishable from a standard mechanics tool storage unit. Here is where most people ruin the battery bank longevity in a system like this. They allow the batteries to discharge below 50% of their rated capacity on a regular basis. AGM deep cycle batteries are rated for approximately 400 to 500 full discharge cycles to 20% capacity, but they are rated for over 1,000 cycles to 50% capacity. Running the system to 50% discharge and recharging rather than running to 20% more than doubles the usable life of the battery bank. A battery monitor that shows state of charge as a percentage costs about $12 and pays for itself many times over in extended battery life. Set your inverter's low voltage cutoff to 12 volts, which corresponds to approximately 50% state of charge in a 12-volt AGM bank, and let the cutoff protect the batteries automatically when you are not monitoring. Press your hand against the side of the inverter after 30 minutes of operation under load. It should feel warm, not hot. An inverter running at less than 50% of its rated capacity stays warm. An inverter running above 75% of its rated load for extended periods gets hot enough that the fan runs continuously. If the fan is running constantly, the load is higher than the inverter was sized for, and the system needs either a larger inverter or a reduced load. Hot electronics in an enclosed toolbox in a warm garage are a longevity problem you want to identify early. At hour 1 of a grid failure, your toolbox system is running silently on battery reserves while your neighbor is pulling the generator cord. At hour 12, the panels have already begun recharging the batteries from the morning sun. At day 3, the generator across the street has been silent for 2 days because the fuel ran out. Your freezer is still running. At week 2, if the sun has been adequate and the critical load has stayed below your design basis, the system continues operating without any external input. The toolbox in your garage has remained closed and unremarkable for 14 days. This is not really about generators versus solar. It is about honestly evaluating what a system can and cannot do before the moment you depend on it. About the quiet satisfaction of a system that runs silently, recharges from free energy falling on the panel, and stores everything you need to manage it in a box that looks like every other box in your garage. I do not want you to sell your gas generator before you have tested this battery system through at least one complete discharge and recharge cycle on your actual critical loads. Run the system on the loads you plan to run. Measure the discharge rate. Confirm that the solar input matches your consumption on a typical day in your location. If the numbers work in testing, they will work in a real event. If this silent battery build changed the way you think about what preparedness actually requires, please subscribe and like the channel. We are unearthing practical wisdom that the modern world has tried to bury. Power your household on what falls from the sky. The next treasure of forgotten knowledge will be revealed soon.